After doing all these Fate lore videos, I've come across plenty of fights in the series. Let's rank them. Welcome back to Otaku Daikun, Dai here. Today's video is about as straightforward as they come. It's time for me to rank the top 10 best and worst fight scenes in the Fate series. Well, top 10 best fights and 5 worst fights, that is. I honestly couldn't find more than 5 fights I actually don't like, and even then, I only low-key dislike them. Also, I'm keeping things exclusive to Fate, otherwise Kara no Kyokai would be butting in, and I'd have a harder time choosing. In addition, I have a few disclaimers to cover. First, this video represents my opinion. You know the drill. Just because your list would be different doesn't mean either of ours is superior. I simply happen to express myself through videos and hope to spark a discussion. Since there are no fights that I genuinely dislike, I'll be playing devil's advocate to pick ones that just don't wow me as much as the winners here. I'll be limiting this video to fights that have been animated because I feel like presentation and choreography play an important role. That said, I won't be judging these fights exclusively off of animation quality or sheer epicness alone, as the Heaven's Feel movies would steal all that glory. Rather, I will be heavily considering the narrative significance of these fights. By best, I'm not referring to bouts between servants with the greatest abilities, but rather the most dramatic fights that invoke a lot of meaning and character to them. Lastly, I'll call my bias and promise not to stuff it too much with Artoria. But this is Otaku Daikun after all. The King of Knights must make an appearance. Hopefully you agree to these conditions. So let's have some fun. Or you could just insult my tastes in the comments. Whatever comes first. Again, just because a fight is on this list, that doesn't make it bad or that I don't like it. Honestly, I found Achilles' final bout with Keiron to be a very unique and inventive concept. Seriously, servants fighting on top of multiple jetliners? Sounds too crazy to be true. I've included it here though, because it doesn't feel so much like a Fate fight, and more like a mix of Die Hard and Harry Potter. So yeah, Shiro's pretty cool, but he's not my favorite. His fight against, well, himself really, certainly drags on beyond the point of feeling dramatic tension. Shiro just keeps getting his ass handed to him. But this is cool, since the fight really isn't about swords. Even though Shiro is rapidly learning Archer's fighting style as they clash swords, the true fight is about their ideals. Archer regrets becoming a hero, and is trying to erase his former self, convinced that no matter what, Shiro will one day grow up to be just like him, fostering the same regrets. Ironically, however, it is this very confrontation that pushes Shiro's resolve, such that he doesn't ever wind up abandoning his ideals. Archer thought killing Shiro was what he had to do, but their duel in itself manages to do the trick. It makes sense then that Shiro would spend the entire fight on the receiving end, enduring multiple hits, only to defeat Archer with a single thrust. Now, you can't exactly call this much of a fight, but that's what makes it so awesome. How can someone like Gilgamesh be defeated so quickly? At the end of the day, he's still a heroic spirit, and forces stronger than him continue to hold his nuts in a vice grip. It's quite reminiscent of when he lost Enkidu in life. Thus, even though Sakura's controlling it, she's tapping into the Grail's powers, forces that, quite honestly, make servants their bitch. Gilgamesh getting gobbled is an unexpected, yet welcome change of pace. Thanks to Dean Stay Night, one of my least favorite fights just so happens to be the very first I'd seen. While Ufotable made it look absolutely gorgeous, it's still rather underwhelming. It's supposed to serve as a tutorial fight of sorts in the visual novel, and yet right out of the gate it's stretching some logic. Best doggo Kuz got his gay bolg, a noble phantasm that guarantees his spear strikes his target's heart by reversing causality. It's this incredibly epic thing too, and yet somehow it still misses. I mean, that's great for Artoria, but I just don't like the logic used to explain her survival. Basically, she's got an instinct skill, magical resistance, and high luck. It's not like she had this amazing counter technique or anything, making Ku's best and most powerful attack come off as a tad pathetic. Let this be known as the grandest unpopular opinion out there. That's right, I'm quite fond of Sieg's final showdown with Karna. Sieg being able to transform into Siegfried as a result of having the hero's heart inside him is pretty damn original. The people calling him cardboard must be ignoring the strong connection he has to Astolfo. Astolfo saved Sieg, helping him escape, only for that kindness to be returned when Sieg made Astolfo his servant. These two weaklings derive power as a team, which is why it's heartwarming to see Astolfo dive into Karna's Vasavi Shakti. He comes to the rescue with Achilles' shield, which is fitting given Astolfo's lore of acquiring various treasures on his journeys. The fight also gives Karna a chance to live up to his name, Hero of Charity, by graciously accepting defeat. Plus, have you seen this animation? It looks less like a servant battle and more like a clashing of gods. So yeah, I like it. Sue me. Everyone agrees that Miyuverse Shiro is a total badass, and I definitely feel pressure to include him in this list. But what I really like about this fight is Kuro's intervention. Previously, Shiro had failed in finishing Angelica off while trying to rescue his sister Miyu. But now he finally has a second chance. It succeeds, not simply because he got stronger, but his act of sending Miyu to a world where she could make friends wound up bringing him more allies. Both Shiro and Kuro have an affinity for the heroic spirit Emiya class card, and are fighting with variations of Archer's techniques, creating a pseudo-reenactment of Shiro fighting Gilgamesh and Stay Night. So, Vlad's whole spiel is pretty clever. He was a cherished and charismatic leader who employed brutal tactics to beat an otherwise unbeatable foe. Sadly, authors took his cruelty and romanticized it to be associated with the famous Count Dracula. As a servant, this manifests as a curse. He has the ability to let himself become the ferocious vampire legends associate with him, but knowing this to be pure fiction, he doesn't want to use it. That part's great. It's the ensuing fight when he turns vampire that bothers me. Maybe it's because they had too many servants in one scene, or that Vlad's vampire form is just too big and ugly to draw consistently. But this particular battle comes across as sloppy. Even though this fight is one between masters, it's great to see since it's so refreshing. Aside from El Malloy case files, we don't necessarily get to see what it's like to study at the clock tower. Clearly though, dueling and sparring are indeed allowed. This bout serves to showcase how modern mages often have to supplement their magecraft with martial arts in order to survive. This is almost less about the fight and more about a conflict of interests. As it turns out, neither Kiritsugu nor Kaneth happen to care much for their servants' chivalry and honor. Mages are nasty and underhanded, and Kiritsugu is a champion of fighting dirty. Thus, while Diarmuid and Artoria are having a fair duel, Carrie's saying, "Fuck that, let's just get this over with." From the shadows, he tricks Kaneth into signing a ceasefire that only binds the two of them to the agreement. Since Maya isn't a part of that, she just shoots Kaneth dead, causing Diarmuid to vanish. Before he does though, his enraged eyes do a fantastic job of showing just how unsacred and lowly Kiritsugu's actions were. Narratively, it serves to form an idealistic wall between Kiritsugu and Artoria, separated by drastic worldviews that they can never reconcile. While I very much like the fight between Sieg and Karna, Sieg's fight with Shiro Amakusa Tokisada just isn't the same. I don't know. To me it feels like your average generic shonen feud than a quality Fate fight. Lots of swords and clashing, but not a ton of substance. That said, the blasted tree bit is kinda cool, albeit far-fetched. Just like Ku, Medusa is often dealt a bad hand in Stay Night. It isn't until the Heaven's Feel route that she can truly strut her stuff. And even then, it's after getting her ass handed to her by Artoria. But what if I told you that her loss against Saber does a great job explaining Fate's lore? We've got idiots like Shinji whining and complaining about how weak Medusa is, and you might be inclined to believe him, seeing as how quickly she died, off-screen mind you, against Castor. The sheer can of whoop-ass she unleashes against Hassan, however, proves that this whole time, it was Shinji's fault as a master. With control back to Sakura, we can see just how capable Medusa is when she's not shackled by an inept paperweight like him. Not only that, but it's a very unique fight that shows just how damaging her chains can really be. One of the greatest tragedies of Heaven's Feel is Artoria being corrupted by the Grail and Angra Mainyu. It's even more devastating when you realize how dangerous and powerful the King of Knights can be when she's not on your side anymore. Well, in no short part thanks to Ufotable, not only do we get to see a darkened Saber, but we see her on mega steroids, fueled with the tremendous power of the Grail's mud. This fight shows just how much Artoria was being held back by both Shiro and her own sense of justice. By becoming more ruthless, she is finally able to go toe-to-toe with Heracles at his most enraged. This wild explosion of chaotic forces demonstrates just how much the Grail War changes when you take out all the stops. I know Gilgamesh doesn't move around a whole lot when fighting, but at this point, he's literally just sitting in his chair, while his airship does all the work. While it's really interesting to see Lancelot take control over missiles and fighter jets, it's also a bit too strange to see Gilga flying around the skies, using ancient technology that, technically, is more appropriate to Indian mythology. It's mostly strange because he only ever uses it one time in Zero, making their fight more of a side act to the main battle against Gilles de Rais. There is so much to love about this fight. The particular matchup is meaningful. After all, Mordred takes issue with Semiramis for being the same kind of witch-like manipulator as her mom, Morgan Le Fay. For Semiramis, Mordred is the only servant of Red she couldn't lure into her trap. Then there's the venue. The inner chamber of the Hanging Gardens is absolutely massive, and the fight makes use of the entire space. It's basically Mordred surrounded by lasers, traps, and huge phantasmal beasts, so it's far grander than you'd think a fight would be between a Saber and Castor. Then we've got Mordred's bond with Kairi Shishigo. Despite their occasional arguing, the adventurous necromancer is a perfect complement to Mordred's wild attitude. Mordred seeks a father figure to praise her, and Shishigo, after being sterile and losing his adopted daughter, seems to have found Mordred filling that void. This all accumulates in the antidote Kairi makes from the Hydra specimen he accepted as payment for joining the Red faction. It serves as the perfect counter to Semiramis' otherwise undefeated poisoning. Damn, and that final strike is just so intense, followed by a touching and honest farewell. So good. Technically, this is 2 fights in one, but since it still involves the same number of masters and servants, I'm allowing it. Gilgamesh is arguably the strongest servant in the series from a lore perspective anyway. He's as overpowered as they come, by having his noble phantasm be not just a single weapon, but his entire treasury from life. He has a nearly limitless arsenal of legendary swords to draw from. He doesn't even have to bother wielding them himself. They just launch right from the gate. He's got the Chains of Heaven, which can completely bind pretty much any servant, but works especially well the more divine his victim. As if that's not enough, he's got Ea, a blade drill thing that tears apart the fabric of realities, making Iskandar's Ionian Hetairoi look like a wilting sandcastle. Very seldom is he defeated in the story, and when he does, it's typically his fault for underestimating his opponent, falling victim to his own hubris. How does one actually outgun the King of Heroes? In good fairness, it comes down to a match between the servant's rare treasures, Ea versus Avalon. Artoria Pendragon is pretty much always fighting with a handicap. Excalibur is badass, sure, but even Merlin would agree that the real treasure is its scabbard. Avalon, while she had it in life, kept her alive, but was stolen prior to the Battle of Camlon. Bedivere may have yeeted the sword back to the Lady of the Lake, but Avalon was thought to be lost. It's quite beautiful then to consider that Shiro, the man she falls in love with, just so happens to be the one to bring Avalon back to her. Furthermore, it saved his life and vicariously saves her soul. Shiro also served as a good hiding place for the scabbard, since Gilgamesh never sees it coming. Thinking he's won the fight, Gilgamesh unleashes Ea on Artoria, only for her to reveal her hand, using Avalon's protective abilities to send Ea's chaos back on him. Certainly, it is a trick that may only ever work one time. but it buys Artoria enough time to zero in and slay Gilga with Excalibur's light at point-blank range. Perhaps Gilgamesh could have used Enkidu to restrain Artoria at the last moment, but to me it always seemed like he had his hands full dealing with the blowback from Ea. Plus, let's be honest, it's great when kings of different philosophies settle their differences in combat. What elevates this fight even further is how it's inextricably linked to Shiro's bout against Kirei Kotomine. While Studio Dean didn't really do Kirei's fighting skills justice, the narrative beats present are packed with meaning. Kirei, consumed by his obsession for darkness, relies far too much on the Grail's black mud. He gets cocky, thinking he can defeat Shiro with the same petty curses that ate away at Kiritsugu. This gives Shiro the chance to deliver some long-awaited karma. You see, long ago, Kirei done bad. He murdered his mentor Tokiomi, and to find joy in the torment of his daughter, Kirei gave Rin the Azoth dagger used to shank her daddy. It was supposed to be a gift from Tokiomi to his pupil, but it became a symbol of betrayal. While Rin didn't know about Kirei's murder, that didn't stop her from spending her years loading excess mana into the Azoth dagger, building it up as a special one-shot weapon. Kirei thinks he's got the upper hand by brutalizing Rin back at Shiro's house, but her resentment lives in the blade that Shiro plunges into his chest. Not even Hassan's Zabaniya can pulverize the damned priest like that. Good show, Rin. Artoria and Shiro's simultaneous fights happen to be poignant examples of one's life deeds and struggles, coming back around as an asset when needed most. So there you have it. In the comments below, please tell me your most and least favorite Fate fights. I'm sure that our opinions will be as combative as the bouts listed here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and most of all, smashing that notification bell as if it were your waifu. That way you'll never miss out on all of my anime content, lore videos, live streams, and Holy Waifu Wars polls. My vids are struggling to get featured, so that bell is absolutely critical. If you want to support me directly, check out my Patreon, or consider donating via Super Chat. And as always, celebrate your fandom.